The Seed of the Expanse. Prologue. Ego sum qui seminat, et magna ignota mea est terra.
It starts off as a mirage, and you hear the rush of the wind over the water. You feel it first in your feet, and when you look down to see them, they are bare inside a shallow pool of water as clear as glass. When you look up, you see the eternal sea that stretches infinitely in all directions, crystallizing before you are mountainous islands with peaks rising higher than the clouds. The feeling is of total bliss, a sense of serenity found nowhere else, but in heaven itself. You are totally unencumbered there. No mortal thing can worry or trouble you. And there are the voices too. Oh, they are sweeter than honey, yet more powerful than thunder. They speak to you in riddle, and other times in prophecy, but always with a purpose and with guidance. One spoke to me saying, "Come quick, and sow the seed of the expanse. Lo, only those with the sight to see shall see the light that is to be when from atop the peak of old Mount Mons, the seed shall rise as Atom Calasan." Voice memo from Linda Planter, recalling her experience in The Expanse, 2024 AD.
July 25th, 2024. There's something wrong with me, Tom. I know it. There has to be some explanation for all these visions. Linda exclaimed to Tom, who denied her claims that her visions, frequent as they are evidence of some form of psychiatric disorder. Honey, please hear me on this. You do not have a problem. What you have is a gift. You can see things that regular people can't. Think of how far it's gotten us. He spoke. I don't think having the same vision over and over again, day in and day out for years, is anything gift-worthy. Whoever would give out a gift like this is surely insane. Linda stood firm. But you don't have the same visions over and over again. You have new ones, too. Like the one from last night, you said something about Peru, right? Tom said, attempting to steer the subject a little. He knew his wife too well to dwell on that subject. Oh yes, Peru. Nazca specifically. It was a wonderful vision, actually. We were doing what we love, Tom, digging stuff up. We dug up something important, what it was. Well, that I don't remember. Linda smiled once she recollected the dream. I've been wanting to do some digging, so how about it? Tom asked, nudging her arm, trying to cheer her up a little. Yeah, I'd like that, Linda said. On their private flight to Peru, Linda thought about her vision again. The object she looked for was as plain as it was mysterious. It was evident that she had to find something, and that the object itself was important. But she did not know why. All she knew was where. Her mysterious sixth sense, as her husband puts it, brought the couple to a place where the hills flatten out and open up into a large and arid stretch of tan sandy flatlands that resemble the floor of a lithified sea. This part of Nazca, bleak and unforgiving, turned away most archaeological teams who favored expeditions less mundane than this. But with that being said, competition nowadays is scarce, and human-organized archaeology is a field standing on weak and shaky legs. It is better left to the robots, like most other things. This made the process of enlisting help a very large and complex hurdle. They wanted the expedition to be off the books, so to speak. And so no metal hands would be doing the digging here, solely humans. Tom, an excellent organizer of men, was able to pull the strings necessary to put together a team of skilled human labor. He needed to be discreet about the whole thing, though. Linda gave him a note of caution. She said she felt a bit of trepidation about what this thing in her vision was, and what it would spell out for her and Tom's future. When Tom recommended avoiding the whole thing and forgetting about it, Linda became animated and told him all about the importance of finding it. Since Tom trusted his wife and her intuition wholly, he agreed to prepare for the trip. Finding the cash to pick up and leave wasn't ever an issue. He had executive access to the funds of the Planter Institute, an organization put together by Tom's great-grandfather many years ago. It is one of the largest private research institutions in the world, and it operates in and endorses many of the arts and sciences. Linda's visions have fortuitously garnered great success within the institute, financially and so on. She essentially held the reins to the institute's carriage, and she was highly regarded amongst her peers. An old gasoline generator hummed softly in the background as it powered on the lights of the dilapidated building. Tom sat in front of a group of Peruvian natives who gathered upon hearing his proposal. Now, my friends, you have to understand. We need your help for only 2 reasons. 1 is to help us dig up an artifact, you see, and 2 is not to tell a single soul that you've done so. Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 small vials. One of the vials contained flakes of gold, and the other was filled with crystal-clear water. He held the 2 vials in front of the group of natives. Instantly, their eyes widened and their mouths watered. One of the men attempted to reach out and take the vial of water, but Tom quickly put the vials back into his pocket. It seems I have my bargaining chip, Tom thought to himself. In today's world, if you do not reside in one of the wealthy districts, fresh water is a delicacy and is truly worth its weight in gold. He cleared his throat and then began to speak again. To those of you who help us, shipments of pure water will be delivered to you and your families on a monthly basis for as long as you keep your promise. Anyone who speaks of what has taken place here will not receive any more shipments. And we do have ways of knowing who and who does not keep their promise. Understood? The men eagerly shook their heads and clambered towards him, begging him for just 1 drop. Good. We start digging tomorrow as soon as the sun rises. For the next 3 days, the crews dug frantically to earn their reward. "Hoist her up!" yelled an energetic Tom Planter at the tan-skinned crew that was working the pulley systems. The pulley systems creaked and moaned as they struggled with a large boulder that had been uncovered after several days of digging. The leader of the workmen frantically yelled in a foreign language and pointed his hand towards the far side of the crater. Tom and Linda stood on a hastily constructed wooden platform, and Linda had her hands tightly gripped onto the metal rails. Perspiration trickled down her forehead. "Nervous, honey?" Tom asked her, nudging her arm. "Oh, Tom, not nervous. Just excited, I think," she said. "Well, I'd say that makes 2 of us." As the boulder was lifted out from the ground below, it left a vast crater in its place. A crew of 5 tan-skinned workers pushed on a long wooden beam that jutted out horizontally from the bottom of the pulley system, and the crane began to swing the boulder to the side of the crater. Once it had reached the outer precipice, Tom ordered that the rock be carefully set down. Linda's eyes gleamed with excitement as she saw what looked like the top of a smooth metal arch sticking out from the ground at the epicenter of the crater. The arch was made of a glossy black material and did not seem to be natural. An indescribable impulse caused her to run off of the platform and make her way to the crater. "Linda!" she heard her husband yell at her. "Hold up now. Wait for the rest of us." She reached the outer edge of the crater and then slid down the steep bank without hesitation. Once she reached the bottom, she ran up to the metal arch and crouched down near it. She saw that it was slightly radiating with soft flecks of golden light. She stretched her arm out to touch it, and as her hand got closer to the arch, it began to glow brighter. She quickly withdrew her hand as a voice from behind startled her. She was so intensely concentrated on the arch that all else zoned out. It was like she was in a trance. Linda looked back and saw that Tom was calling for her. He was standing at the top edge of the crater, looking down at her with his hands above his head. Standing beside Tom were Linda's 7 assistants. One of them, a man with a full beard, bushy eyebrows, and silver bifocals, gazed down at her with a perplexed look. "So, how do you suppose you're going to get out of there?" The man said. A playful grin crossed his face. "I think once you see what I'm seeing, you're going to want to be down here instead," she replied as she waved at them to come down. After a few seconds, Tom and the 7 researchers slid down into the crater. Once Tom reached the bottom, he stood up and brushed the dirt off from his pants, and then walked over to his wife and crouched down beside her. He looked at Linda and then looked at the arch. Her eyes sparkled as she stared down at it. Tom looked back at Linda and noticed that she was enchanted by it. "Honey?" he asked. Linda shook her head and blinked her eyes as his voice broke her concentration again. "Everything all right?" Tom placed his hand on her shoulder. "Yeah, but I feel something. It's a feeling that I can't describe," Linda said as she began to become enthralled by the arch again. "All I need to do is touch it," she said. "I think it's better if we wait." Before Tom could stop her, Linda reached out and placed her palm on the arch. She felt a sudden jolt of energy course through her veins, and then her consciousness left her. Tingling sensations peppered her entire body. The arch slowly began to emanate a hazy yellow aura around the spot where her hand was placed. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and her eyes closed shut. Her body became completely still. On Earth, all stood still, and Linda entered the expanse. A voice called to her, saying,
"Come forth with shield and with lance, to sow the seed of the expanse."
And then she woke. She repeated, "Come forth with shield and with lance, to sow the seed of the expanse." "Linda, honey? Are you all right?" Tom questioned, leaning in and looking at her face with concern. Linda looked up at him. "Oh, Tom, it was so beautiful. If only you could have been there with me." Linda's tone made clear her state of wonder. Where had she gone to? "Been where, Linda?" "I don't understand," Tom said, concerned. "The expanse, my dear. I was there. I saw it all. All of my visions, everything that I have seen over the years. It is all clear to me now. I was there for what felt like months, Tom, months. It is the most perfect place I have ever been, and the voices, the same voices that spoke to me in my dreams, they were there too," she said. Linda turned to gaze at the metal arch in front of them. The rest of it was still buried deep underground. "This is a seed of the expanse. It is a relic of a foregone race, and it will change everything. We were meant to uncover it. We were guided to it for a reason. And so, it falls to us to keep it safe. We must take it with us, Tom, and not tell a single soul about it," she said, with an elevated sense of significance and urgency. "Okay. I trust you, Linda. I do. But what is the expanse? And a foregone race? I'm so confused. How do you know all of this?" inquired Tom. "Soon you will understand too. Soon you'll experience what I've experienced. But we have to move the seat now. Nobody but us can know of its existence. All of our work over the past 8 years has led us here, Tom. I know it. I can feel it, she urged. Okay. We will go. I'll get everything organized. But when we get home, you owe me some answers, okay? Tom stated firmly. Once we are home and the seed is safe, we can talk all you want. Tom nodded and then set off to work, dismissing the team of Peruvian workers and then delivering the valued stores of water to their homes. Then, he made preparations for a quick takeoff from the nearest airport where their private jet was. The crew was told to accommodate a large object, approximately 9 feet in height. When the pilot started to ask questions, Tom told him that it was best if he just let it happen and act ignorant to the fact that a 9-foot-tall stone chair was coming back to Tennessee with them. The pilot, one of Tom's friends who was employed by the Institute, chuckled unbelievingly. Tom told him to wait and see, and that they would be there shortly. When he arrived back at the excavation site, Linda and their 7 research assistants had dug out the rest of the artifact. The team had carefully avoided contact with the seat, which was much larger than expected. Its back rose 9 feet into the air. The 8 of them dug away until a trench was formed around it. Then they wrapped it tightly in cloth and lifted it into the back of their transport van. On the next day, they took off for home, with the black stone seat in tow. Convincing as he was, Tom succeeded in leading the Peruvian Antiquities Department astray and paid out a few favors to the officials who allowed him and his wife to undertake the excavation in the first place. Transporting the mysterious artifact back to the States without a single person noticing was a tall order indeed. But after all, it was only a chair, right? Who would take much notice of it anyway? There was one thing evidentiary, though, and this became more and more salient to Tom as he thought about the artifact on the way home, which was that the seat does in fact draw the curious eye. That it does have a subtle effect on the human mind that one can only describe as being undeniably alluring. Like the glitter of a precious stone or the flickering of a campfire, the seat causes you to admire it, to gaze deeper into its depths, and to look for an answer to a question that you have not asked. Several times Tom has wanted to touch it, if only just to feel its cool stone surface. But something held him back for now. It wasn't the right time, not yet. When they landed in the States, it was to an airstrip nestled in the steep mountainscapes of Tennessee, to a place far removed from most of society. It was literally carved into the mountain and was accessible only to the planters. The hills here are serene and are inviting to the thoughtful and to the adventurous, to the solitary and to the poet. These rolling hills, well, these belong to the planters, an old and wealthy lineage. They've belonged to them for 4 generations, passed down from father to son for ages. And now the estate and the hills belong to Tom. His father bequeathed him all the family assets after managing the Planter Institute for decades. Although he enjoyed the challenge and was witness to many groundbreaking technological innovations, he was drained by it completely and needed to recuperate somewhere far away from Tennessee. So, Joseph and his wife Annette packed their bags, took a small fortune from the fund, and set off to live their later days overseas in the Alps. Plus, Joseph and Annette believed that their only son Tom was better equipped to handle the coming challenges of the Institute within this changing world. But then, he had also met Linda Lorette. Linda was something of a miracle for Tom and for the Institute. She brought it purpose and direction. The strange thing about it was that she somehow knew things that others didn't. She was privy to something like clairvoyance. Only Tom knew that her clairvoyance came from her visions, and that while she does have novel ones every so often, most of them are one reoccurring vision. A later hollow recording of Linda Planter recounts that vision.
It begins on a lush green field covered with daffodils. Oh, it's so beautiful, so pristine. The soft rush of the stream, the brush of the wind through my hair, the chirp of the nightingales. I remember walking through the paradise and running my hands through the tall, silky grass. I climbed the knoll to its crest to a sprawling oak tree covered with comely green moss. It was the most magnificent tree I have ever seen. Its limbs had grown so long that many of them arched and touched the ground. Little birds flew from limb to limb, singing beautiful melodies, and the chipmunks and squirrels scurried around its wide trunk. My goodness, if only you could have seen it, you would have been as amazed as me. But then, as if the seasons had suddenly changed to winter, its leaves shriveled up and fell to the ground. I remember reaching down to pick one up, and it disintegrated in my hand. When I looked up again, the tree was ablaze with a cataclysmic flame that sent a thick plume of smoke high into the air. The flame swirled like a tornado and ripped the tree from the ground, roots and all. I looked all around me at the rich daffodils and the tall, silky grass, and all of it was gone. The lush field was then a barren wasteland, grey with ash. My fists clenched in anger. I was mad at something, but what it was that drew my enmity was foreign to me. Then I felt something grow inside of my fist, something hard and round. I opened my hand to take a look at it. It was a delicate little acorn, but it shone with the brightest of gold. It was the last remnant of life in this hazardous expanse of death, and it drew a smile so large across my face that goosebumps ran down my arms and hope returned to my heart. Then I heard a voice that I will never forget. It said to me, "Come, sow the seed of the expanse. Come, sow the seed of life." It was there that the vision ended.
She tried to make sense of her visions, but it was difficult for her. That is, until she found the seat. Touching it made her click. She was different now, and the whole team knew it, especially Tom. He knew that his wife changed after she touched it. It was evident in her intensely focused and stoic demeanor, something uncharacteristic of her beforehand. Whenever Tom asked her about it, what she told him was that what they were doing was more important than anything else that had ever happened before, and that she just needed to focus. He wondered if she would ever be the same again, and hoped that to be the case. Tom hadn't touched the seat yet. Actually, none of the team had. He wondered if the same thing would happen to somebody else if they touched it. But Tom didn't really know what happened to Linda when she touched the seat. He hadn't asked her yet because they had been in such a hurry. Now that they were back at the estate, he had his chance. "Hey," he said, nudging her arm. She looked up at him. It was late, and she was resting on his shoulder. "Hey," she replied, weariness apparent in her voice. But she still managed to smile. "What did you see when you touched the seat?" he asked her directly. "If I tell you, I don't think you'll believe me," Linda said. "And what makes you think that?" Tom asked. "Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong and you will believe me," Linda said. "Try me," he said. "Think of a place that is so perfect that nothing can trouble or worry you, or harm or trick you. Think big, Tom, like eternally big. Place a shallow sea of water as clear as crystal everywhere you look. Put mountain islands on top of the waters so tall that the clouds hug their very bottoms. And think perfect bliss, like the sweetness of sitting in a field of reeds rustling with the wind. That's where I was, and that's where you'll be too soon." Tom need not guess at the existence of the place she was describing. It was real in the eyes that glittered with awe and curiosity. Linda Planter spoke the truth. She had witnessed the expanse. For the rest of the night, they carried on in discussion atop their balcony as the research team brought the chair to a secret place beneath the estate, to a place hidden from outside view, the undisclosed headquarters of the Planter Institute. The strange qualities of the chair skyrocketed the abilities of the Institute and totally transformed it from the inside out. In time, Tom and their team of 7 researchers had their turn at the seat. When they sat in it, they entered the expanse and were guided by the voices. When they came back to Earth, they had new intuitions, new ideas, and new methods. They applied these to great avail for the next 13 years, growing the Planter Institute into a massively influential organization. The Institute expanded significantly when Tom and Linda Planter founded the International Space Exploration Initiative in 2037, 7 years after the monopolization of space by the large governments and companies of Earth, and 2 years after the creation of the Red City on Mars. Much had happened over the 13 years since the seat was discovered. The whole planet was in fast forward, with technological innovations coming forth with a fever pitch. What changed most saliently was how the show was run, and importantly, from where. The Red City, which opened on Mars in 2035, quickly became a refugee camp for the societal puppeteers. Open to only a select million of the world population, it encouraged a particular applicant. The premier zealots of the World Government Initiative, commonly called the WGI, are holed up there, and by the year 2037, they began to assert pressure upon Earth. With the tools of deception and oppressive economics at their side, powers enhanced exponentially by the devices of artificial general intelligence, they exerted their malevolent control upon the 11 billion humans on Earth. This is what sparked the creation of the International Space Exploration Initiative, which was intended to decentralize the monopolization of spacefaring. For Tom and Linda Planter, it was a fight against the collective power of nearly all the governments of Earth. For anyone else, it would have been a foolish fight, like trying to stop the rising of the sun or the moon. But the Planters had one mighty trick up their sleeve. They had the Seed of the Expanse, a puzzling and extraordinary thing of the past, present, and future. And to the dismay of the WGI, it kept the Planters several steps ahead at all times. Linda was driven by visions that grew stronger with every passing year. What also grew was her control over them. The voices told her that she was chosen, and that Tom Planter and the Planter family were chosen, for a great and noble purpose, a purpose that would become more and more evident to them over time. For now, all they knew was that they had to prepare for something great, but also something disastrous. They knew not what it was, but that both were coming. Meanwhile, in 2040, 16 years after the discovery of the seat, the Institute was leading the fight against WGI-dominated spacefaring. For them, everything changed in 2040 with the inception of the Da Vincian, commonly called the DAV. The Da Vincian was the first ever prototype for an intergalactic spaceship. Models had been proposed earlier by the General Artificial Intelligence mainframe, aka GAME, but none of the models had succeeded in faster-than-light travel. To the surprise of many, it would be the Planter Institute who would crack the code. To the wider world, it was like the discovery came out of thin air. For 2 decades, the engineers and physicists of the 2 planets attempted to solve the riddle of interstellar travel, but it remained unsolved. Many gave up on the idea entirely. That is until the most unexpected of parties found the solution within the well-kept labs of the Planter Institute, deep underground in a place undisclosed to the wider public, a place where minds mingled with the expanse. The Da Vincian was the creation of their mutual efforts. In 2040, they unprecedentedly scheduled a test flight with a willing volunteer. The World Government Initiative did its utmost to cancel the flight and denounce the attempt. But the Da Vincian launched anyway, bypassing the pseudo-legalities with very careful footing. It wasn't broadcasted in any public news, and in fact, most people didn't know the flight even happened. When the Da Vincian did not return after a month, and then after a year, the World Government Initiative seized its chance to take down the planters for quote-unquote murdering a coerced volunteer to experiment with a risky technology. The press lambasted Tom and Linda Planter for months and months, seeking to delegitimize and smear them. International talks were held about the dangers of a rogue company playing with fire and endangering the public, discussing ways to shut the International Space Exploration Initiative down for good. However, the Planter Institute managed to keep their labs open and remarkably out of touch. In 2041, the blueprints for a novel design, a space freighter, were authorized in the space and rocket facility of the Planters, known as the Da Vinci Labs. This design showed immense promise. So much promise that it was ruled by an international court that its designs should be made public for use by the commercial branch of the World Government Initiative. Stealing the technology of the Da Vinci Labs at that point was treated as a parlay for the loss of a human being in a dangerous test flight and launching without unanimous congressional consent. But if the planners designed a way to transport large amounts of materials expeditiously between the two planets, faster than their current modes of travel, then the WGI would graciously let them off the hook. So, with much hesitancy, the experimental trek from Earth to Mars was sanctioned by the World Government Initiative in late 2041. The Beluga came into commission in 2042. The ship was several times more massive than the largest spacefaring vehicle designed to date. It was so large that it had to be transported to space in myriads of pieces and finished in zero gravity. The building process was closely monitored by the WGI watchdogs, but the process was undertaken with the sole direction of the Planter Institute, the only organization capable of accomplishing the feat. In late May of 2042, Tom announced that the Beluga was ready for a test flight. The lumbering space transport was not meant to look pretty. It was meant to serve its purpose. Fortunately for the planters, and unfortunately for the WGI, the Beluga had a different purpose than to transport the riches of Earth to Mars. A quarter of the way on its test flight to Mars, the pulse drive malfunctioned and sent an electromagnetic burst around the ship that fried all of its navigational functions. The Beluga was not recovered because there was no ship capable of recovering it. Therefore, it drifted off into space, past Mars and towards the asteroid belt. The Beluga was declared lost by the WGI, and the International Space Exploration Initiative was shut down. It has been 11 years since the loss of the Beluga, and 12 since the loss of the Da Vincian. 28 years had passed since the uncovering of the seat. By this point, Tom and Linda had lost much of their influence, and so too had the Institute. But although the image of the Institute was feeble now, its operations ran strong and smooth, with steady progress towards their unifying mission statement: to disassemble the monopoly of space through innovation. But this wasn't truly their mission. Instead, it was something much greater that drove them, and to them, it was surely something prophetical. 2052 AD was the most turbulent year to date on Earth. The World Government Initiative's vision of a total world government was now fully realized, and it subsequently metamorphosed into the World Sovereign League. All the financial institutions, courts, places of learning, medical facilities, and manufactories, etc., are now directly overseen by a single entity whose influence molds the political environment of all the world's nations. There was now a new way of the world, one so fundamentally unlike all others in history that it ought not be called a human world at all. One would say it has become a world of abundance and leisure. Another would call it a deranged and reduced world, one that is entirely estranged from reality. Whichever version one wishes or believes in, the same is true. One must abide by the conformity law and consume the C6 pill, or be punished. From the balcony of her Tennessee mountain estate, Linda Planter gazed out at the stars. She couldn't help but worry about her husband being gone for so long. He was summoned to New York for some purpose that she wasn't allowed to know. She swayed back and forth in a wooden rocking chair and mulled it over. He's never been gone this long. I hope he's all right. Linda heard the door behind her open up and close. She spun around and saw her 7-year-old son Jim at the doorway. He was dressed in pajamas decorated with stars and rocket ships and held a toy spaceship in his hands. A warm smile stretched across Linda's face, and she waved at her son to come over to her. Well, hello there, Sleepy. You, little one, are supposed to be in bed, she said as she lifted him up onto her lap. Jim rubbed his knuckles against his eyes and looked up at the stars with his mother. Mom, where's Daddy? Jim asked. Tom had been gone for a few days now. Linda took in a deep breath and waited for a few moments before she responded. Daddy is in New York. He's on a short trip there, sweetheart. He will be back soon, I promise. I miss him, he said, cuddling close to his mother. And he misses you too. We can call him tomorrow, okay? She said. Okay, responded Jim. Now off to bed, sweetie. You have to be rested for your tutor tomorrow. Linda kissed her son on the forehead and then led him up to his room. She tucked him in and softly closed the door behind her as she walked out. Her heart swelled with many emotions as she walked back out onto the balcony. She hadn't heard from her husband in 12 hours, and she began to worry about him. The World Sovereign League quickly became known for their grueling tactics when it came to extracting information from people. But fortunately, they were smart enough to give Tom Planter special treatment. The last thing the World Sovereign League needed was for someone as influential as him to start stirring up the waters even more, which were already at boiling point. Recently, the World Sovereign League succeeded in laying its groundwork. The League's Sovereign Economic Forum superseded all financial institutions and gained control over the workings of nearly every financial system. The World Sovereign League's military assets and personnel are stationed in every country, and they monitor and police everyone. Most WSL territories are now experiencing mass resistance from the people. War and uprisings are stirring up in every continent. Linda swung her right hand over to her left arm and tapped her fingers twice on a device that was wrapped around her forearm. The device, generally called an analog, came alive with a dim blue light and projected a hologram over her arm. It displayed a 3-dimensional picture of her, Tom, and Jim. It slowly rotated above her arm, and she touched at her husband's face. The real-time sensory feedback of the hologram allowed Linda to physically feel the projection. It resisted softly against the touch of her fingers. A tear ran down her face, and she wiped it away from her cheek. Above the floating hologram, it displayed the date and time, March 12, 2052, 9:36 p.m. Under the date, in small letters, it read, Ego sum qui seminat, et magna ignota mea est terra. Thanks to the foresight of Linda Planter and the industriousness of Tom Planter, all of the most sensitive facets of the Planter Institute still remain under tight wraps and outside the all-seeing eye of the World Sovereign League. No matter how fast the World Sovereign League moves, the Planters remain 2 steps ahead. But for some faint and strange reason, Linda cannot help but get the feeling that this time is different. Linda closed out the hologram and laid back in her chair. She longed for her husband and desperately waited for him to return. After about an hour of anxious thought, Linda made her way to her room and reluctantly fell asleep. The next morning, she was awoken by a ringtone that emanated from the analog device that was laying on her bedside table. It was Tom. She sprung out of bed and answered the call without hesitation. "Tommy. My goodness, Tommy, are you okay?" "Why haven't you called me sooner?" she asked frantically. "It's good to hear your voice," he responded. His tone was depleted and anxious. "Are you coming home?" Linda paced back and forth within her room. She noticed her husband's tone and didn't like the sound of it. "Yes, honey. Today, I'm afraid we can't talk anymore until I'm home. Something has happened." "What has happened?" "What do you mean, Tom?" "Linda, I can't." He lowered his tone to a whisper. "I'm being watched." "Watched? By whom?" "You come home right this moment, Tom Planter." "You're scaring me," she said. "I have to go." "I will see you soon, my love," said Tom. Before Linda got the chance to respond, the hologram shut off. She attempted to call back but received no response. Hastily, Linda gathered her things and made her way to the airport. Then, she waited for 3 hours until her husband touched down. Eventually, she received a notification that his flight arrived, and she made her way to the greeting area. She looked for his face as dozens of people flooded out of the exit doors. Her heart was pounding uncontrollably. Then she saw him. "Tom," she called. Linda ran up and embraced her husband. He grumbled in pain as she squeezed him. She quickly noticed his pain and broke her embrace. Then she placed her palms on his cheeks. She turned his face to check for any other injuries. "Oh, Tom, what happened to you? Who did this?" she asked. Her eyes widened with anger. "They didn't believe me, Linda. He was noticeably distraught. Linda was able to make out a slight blue tinge on his left eye. He tried to conceal it with makeup, but once she noticed it, she couldn't get it out of her sight. "What did they do to you?" Linda turned Tom's face to the side with her hands and felt a geyser of anger build up within her chest. Tom placed his hand on hers and then lowered them off of his face. "We need to go. Now. We've waited too long. They've caught onto our trail," Tom said. His unbreakable confidence was now showing a weak spot. Fear was noticeable across his countenance. "You mean, go? Linda responded, esoterically. "Yes," he said. He began to walk towards the exit doors and pulled her along. "But it's not ready yet. How are we going to—" Tom stopped and cut her off. "We will find a way, okay? We always find a way." About an hour later, Tom and Linda Planter reached the entrance to their gated estate. Linda pulled up to a column in front of the gate and a screen enlarged in front of her. It scanned her face and then opened the gates. She quickly drove up their winding driveway until she reached their home. She helped her husband out of the car once she parked. He had a severe limp in his left leg that made it difficult for him to walk. She threw his arm over her shoulder and helped him towards the entrance doors. 2 large oak doors automatically swung open for them and then closed behind. As they walked into the living room, Linda yelled for Jim's tutor. Wycliffe, are you here?" A deep, resonating tone replied back. "Yes, I'm here, coming down." The man's voice was distinctly southern and echoed throughout the house. He made his way down the stairs with a young Jim Planter in his arms. Wycliffe is tall and muscular and has long black hair pressed backward. Sitting atop his head is a worn black cowboy hat. "What in the hell?" Wycliffe said, concerned. "Did someone attack you, Tom? You just say the word and I'll—" "Cliff, stop. It is time. We must go now. I need you to get everything ready," interrupted Tom. "But boss?" Cliff chuckled nervously. His voice echoed his concern. We aren't even close to being ready, and you know that. I don't care if we're ready or not. If we don't leave now, we won't have the chance to. Do you understand me, Cliff? Do you understand the gravity of our situation? They know about Peru. They know that we are hiding something from them. And they began to ask questions about my abilities, and if they had changed at all since 2024. Of course, I told them no, but they didn't believe me. But they did not know the right questions to ask me. You see, Cliff? They don't know about Project Odyssey. They aren't aware of our plan. But they told me to be ready, and that they are watching, always watching. Both Linda and Wycliffe were taken aback by Tom. They now understood the gravity of their situation. Okay, Tom, replied Cliff. I'll head out now. I take it you are ready for this too? He asked Linda. We go where we must go, and where we are now is where we must be. Linda responded somewhat poetically, catching Cliff off guard a little. I take that as a yes, then. Are you sure you're all right, Tom? You don't need me here with you? He asked. Yes, I'm sure, my friend. Tom straightened his posture and put his hand on Cliff's shoulder. I trust you more than anyone I know, Cliff. I want your word that you will do as I asked and carry out this mission. Cliff returned the gesture, saying, I'll do anything for you, brother. You know that. Then go. Time is more of the essence now than it has ever been before, Tom said decisively. Without another word, Wycliffe Hollifield dashed out of the back entrance of the estate and drove off into the distance. Then, only a few moments later, Tom and Linda heard a distinct crash emanate from the distance. No, Tom said in a foreboding tone. What? What is it, Tom? Linda replied. Tom was sharply cut off by the 5 hammering knocks on their front door. Then a choppy mechanical voice projected loudly from outside the door. This is the State Correctional Force. Open your doors or be subject to entry. Linda set Jim down and knelt in front of him. She embraced him tightly. Tom knelt down beside his wife and placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Jimmy, my son, I need you to remember these words. Jim began to cry and couldn't contain himself. He was scared and ran to hug his father. Tom hugged him tightly and then spoke to him. Although Jim was young, he was old enough to understand the situation and felt as if this might be the last time he would see his parents. You will plant the future, Jim. I need you to seek out the 7. One day, you must come back here, and then you will understand what I am telling you. Everything will make sense then. Find the man who leads the 7 and put your trust in him. Repeat these words at the panel once everything has been revealed to you. Ego sum qui seminat, et magna ignota mea est terra. The 7 will know what I mean by this. When you return here, you will find what you truly are, and all will become clear. I love you more than you can ever know, my son. At the doors, they heard another 5 knocks, followed by a mechanical voice saying, This is the State Correctional Force. Open your doors, or be subject to entry. Linda embraced her son, and then began to speak to him. Jimmy, sweetheart, she said with big eyes that held a glitter of hope even though they were watered with tears. The light of the world is on your shoulders. We need you to be strong, and we know you will be. You are the strongest person I know. Here, I want you to take this. She pulled a silver ring off her finger and gave it to him. It had the same words, Ego sum qui seminat, et magna ignota mea est terra, circuitously engraved around it. Find those who you can trust and plant the future with them. I love you, sweetheart. I love you so much. Keep your faith, my amazing son. The future is great and bright. Suddenly, the hammering knocks at the door intensified into a thundering crash, and the wooden doors shattered into pieces. The crash echoed throughout the estate. A cloud of debris filled the living room and made it hard to see. As the dust began to clear, a massive blocky silhouette was seen standing at the doorway, deathly still. Then, much smaller silhouettes rushed into the house on either side of the figure and surrounded the family. They pointed short-barreled rifles at them that were undulating with soft red lights. Two of these men ran up to the family and tore Tom and Linda from Jim. The correctional officers dragged them outside and into the patrol cars. Jim sat in the middle of the floor. His eyes were wide with shock, and he did not know what to say or do. His body was paralyzed with fear. As the dust cleared, Jim looked upwards towards the door again and saw the tall silhouette standing there, as still as a mountain. Jim closed his eyes and tucked his face in between his knees. After a few moments, he opened his eyes again, and the figure was gone, and the dust was cleared. It was shortly after that another group of officers came and took Jim off to the state orphanage in New York City. She came into his life at a most opportune moment. When Jim first caught sight of her, a feeling tugged at his soul with such intensity that he thought he was in a dream. The sight of her was enough to fill his entire heart with warmth. And when she was the object of his gaze, all his problems seemed to fade away. It was as if an enchantment was placed upon him by the messenger of love, urging the young man to take a step in her direction. As he took his first step, she turned towards him, which stopped him in the middle of his step. Her silky golden locks of hair fell across her face as if in slow motion. Then she ran her finger through her hair and placed it behind her ear. As she took away her hand, the features of her face were fully visible to him. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Eyes the perfect shade of blue locked onto his. Jim noticed that her expression changed when she saw him. Her eyes widened and her eyebrows raised, as if in surprise. He felt the same. Who is she? He thought. Who is he? She thought. Jim's eyes fluttered. Is she thinking what I'm thinking? He thought. The answer came to him in epiphany. I'm supposed to meet her here. She's here for a reason. Jim became aware that he knew her, and that he needed to talk to her. This intuition came to him from some faraway place, a place that Jim was not yet familiar with. But he trusted it. There wasn't a way he could ignore it anyway. Any feeling of doubt or reluctance fled from his heart at that moment. He was sure, but he did not know why. And with this, he began to walk towards her. Hello, he said. Hello, she said back in a tone as sweet as honey. Jim opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words left his lips. All he could do was look deeply into her eyes, and she his. There was a familiarity about her that he could not describe, and as he silently stood there, in between words, he felt entirely at home. I'm Jim Planner. Do I know you from somewhere? He asked. Hey, Jim, I'm Jamie, and, I don't know, maybe. I'm leaning towards yes. She paused for a second, contemplating her next words. You do look familiar. There's something about you that reminds me of someone or something, but... You don't know why? He interjected, not taking his eyes away from hers for even a moment. No, I don't. You're right. Wait, how did you know that? You pick up a thing or two from being in the districts for 11 years, and telepathy is one of those things. He jested. Oh, really? She said, grinning. What else did they teach you? Jim finally broke eye contact and looked down at her ruby-colored lips. then back up to her eyes again. "You know," Jamie said coyly, "you don't have to be a telepath to pick up what you're thinking. And you don't have to be a poet to be captured by a beauty like yours," Jim replied, quickly and wittingly. Jamie's eyebrows arched up and her cheeks blushed red. "Jim, that's so sweet. No one has ever said something like that to me before. I have a question. I just can't help but think that you were transferred here for a reason," Jim interrupted for a second time. "Stop that," she said playfully. "But yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's the last month of our last year of schooling, and I got transferred here. And suddenly I meet someone I think I know, but don't know why. And somehow, with all the confusion, being here right now makes total sense to me." As he looked deep into her eyes, he noticed a faint twinkle. There is life in her eyes, life unlike any he had ever seen before. Then he was struck with yet another epiphany. "You haven't taken them, have you?" Jim asked in a whisper. Jamie slowly shook her head and then stuck her tongue out of her mouth. Sitting atop her tongue was a small red pill. She quickly put her tongue back into her mouth and smiled. "Never," she said back. Shrugging her shoulders, Jim looked over Jamie's shoulder at a serving counter. There were lines of teenagers and young adults anxiously waiting on their doses of the C6 pill. The administrators of school districts across the world aren't too concerned about checking if their students swallow the pill or not. It has become so wildly popular that it shows a 99.9% acceptance rate across the entirety of Earth. Dissenters are essentially non-existent, and so the educators' jobs are made strikingly easy. "I'd like to introduce you to some of my friends. There is something very urgent to discuss, and I'd like to have you with me." Jamie noticed that the tone of his voice became a little more commanding, but not in an offsetting way. She admired his confidence and wanted to follow him. "Yes, I'd like that very much." And from that moment on, Jim and Jamie stayed together. She was a crucial piece in a marvelous puzzle that characterized Jim's life. For the next 7 years, they remained together, flying under the radar of an oppressive world and plotting their escape.